Hello. As part of our special coverage of Guinea, we spoke to several players in the political scene. Among them is Abdoul Kader Makanera. Mr. Makanera is Chief of Staff of Sidya Toure, one of the top three political leaders in Guinea. Mr. Toure is the head of the UFR, which is one of the parties and civil society organizations that hailed the September 5 coup. 7 months after the coup, we want to know what the UFR thinks about the change, especially the current pace of the transition. Mr. Makanera starts by talking about Sidya Toure. Who is Sidya Toure?
Sidya is the kind of leader that I look up to, and I know many African young Africans, intellectuals in and out of Guinea also look up to. I started to see his career in after his studies in France, his career in the Ivorian government, where he worked for about almost 25 years before he was called up and to come here because Guinea had some crisis, a real economic crisis that led to military revolt and issues. So he was called upon by President Conte in 1996 to come help the country, the economy, to try to, shape it in a way that, would avoid kind of problems that would be known. So he came in 1996 as prime minister, 97, 98, 99. Then, that's when his prime ministership ended. But when he wanted to go back, after seeing what he had done for the country, Guineans refused that he goes back. So they hung on to him, begged him to stay, and so he decided to stay to try to find ways to help, not through politics first. He started an organization, sort of an NGO, through which he made recommendations to the government, but that was not as listened to as it would have been as he'd been a politician. So he was advised to, if you want to be heard, it's better that you speak as a politician because that way they listen to you better. And he that's when he joined. He didn't start a party because, like I said, people wanted him to stay and help. So there was a party here. This party, UFR, was here, was already created by his founder. Decided he asked him to lead that party in the fight for a better Guinea. That's where he is. That's what he's been doing for the last 2 decades.
Guinea has gone through, a lot of, phases since that time. The death of Conte, the first military coup after that, and then we got to this point. And now, in 2010, an election was held in Guinea. Regardless of what happened, it was portrayed as a new beginning for Guinea. Eventually, we ended where we did. I mean, Alpha Conde served 2 terms and wanted to come back. There was a very popular opposition to his decision to go for a third term. So many things happened, there were protests and all that. I'd like to know what was the position of UFR in that.
UFR is a principle based party. Our party platform, in no way you'll find political statements in it. It's all principled and program based. So, in principles first, and that's the reputation that our president has. You ask anyone, that's the first thing they'll say about him. He's a principled person before anything else. So, as a principle, we are a republic, a democratic republic. That's what the country decided to be since it, changed the constitution. I think in 1993, around that time in the early 90s, anyways, to become a constitutional republic with a multiple party political party system. That's what we're being in, and that attracted what it attracted. Also, a liberal economy and all that the good that we've known up to this point. Now, politics and the imperfect political environment has been a hindrance to the real progress that we're seeking. The main principle, number one, that we're after, that the president follows, is exactly that the democratic state be stable, and that the country be a rule of law-based country. And that's what the first fight is about. So when the events came about that the president, Alpha Conde, as you knew, before that, President Sidya was his high representative, was one of the highest ranking officials, could have benefited in every way he wanted from the system. But that principal question separated them. That was, most people didn't know it at the time, but we knew that he wanted to do that. And he did offer us lots of goodies in that if we accompanied him. President said, we can't do that. It goes way out of the democratic fight that we've been fighting. So that was the cause of the split. So we pulled out and we joined the forces to keep democracy alive. That's when you saw us fight in the big fight, that big struggle that you saw happen through the FNDC, where we were founding members and we're still members of that. And we stayed on the principles up to this day.
Okay. Firstly, I should say, eventually we had a change.
Right.
And he went in a not so conventional way.
Right.
Did you support?
It's always unfortunate for any country to have setbacks at every turn. We have known military coups, whether against a living president, which is the first time is him, but before that we had military coups following the death of President Sidya Toure, and then same thing, death of President Conde. We had mutinies in between. Like I said, in the case of 1996, there were mutinies, and we've had quite a few of those. It's not good for the country. No one wishes to have to reset every time, because it sets you back. It sets all the efforts that you've made during it. It's very unfortunate that when people are given the extraordinary privilege that it is to be president or a high-ranking official in a country where the people trust you with all the powers that they trust you with, that at some point you don't get the wisdom to know that you should return that favor to the people. That wisdom, you should always have that, because it's a continuum. So the system that brought you in has to be kept alive. You're not supposed to end it. So the military coup, I couldn't say that we are as is happy about it, but it was a solution to something that had established itself here that was unprecedented. With a military coup, we knew it's an illegitimate power that's not going to be able to stay because it's not sitting on institutions. So that you know how to fight. How do you fight a system that came in legally, legitimately, and decides to use that legitimacy in the legal system to stay in with the institutions in? This is worse than a military coup. That's why it was the lesser of two evils that the military coup was, because that's the reason why we applauded it, and we still think it was a good thing that happened, because that sends a signal to anyone, because there will be presidents. We're in a democracy. There will be elected officials. That's a Pandora box. If we don't close it, it's going to be very, very, very bad. Military coup comes in, you can fight it, get out. But if civilians start doing coups, constitutional coups, legal coups, and stuff like that, that country is just not going anywhere. So that's why we thought, and we still think, it was the lesser of two evils, and we applauded it in the context that it came in, and hoping that it'll stay on the tracks that we hoped it'll stay on until we get out of here, and we get out of here quickly and safely.
Okay, so it's been 7 months now since the coup, and I'd like to know what you think about the pace of the transition.
We've been in for 7 months, and even for the most optimistic of us, not the time frame. We kind of all knew that we weren't going to have an election in 6 months, which was a position of principle of the ECOWAS, which is where you start negotiating, right? They thought we'll say that, and then we'll have the counteroffer. We talk about it, but the silence is the big worrisome question around it. You know, when they're not saying, when the current leadership, the military junta is not saying anything about when and how we're going to get out of here, when there's no dialogue, when we don't see where we're going, flying blind is the most scary thing you can have. Right now we're scared because we're not seeing where we're going, and the person at the helm, at the commander, are not telling us where we're going. That creates an anxiety in the population at large, but among politicians also, because we're the ones who represent essentially the will of the people in a certain way, because they are members of a party, and they all ask us questions. What's happening? We don't know these other guys. Yes, they did what they did. We thought it was good because you thought it was good. Now, what are we doing? We don't have an answer for them. When the political leadership doesn't have an answer for the base, it stirs it up. People start being anxious, and after anxiety, they start being angry, right? For fear, out of fear of not knowing where they're going. And that could very quickly degenerate into political crisis, you know.
So we were promised by the junta that every facet of the Guinean society would be involved in the transition process, from politics to business and all that. And we have seen the list. Yes, politicians are involved. How much is the UFR involved?
Not enough, you know, and most people will say, yeah, but you know, you're not the only. UFR is a single political party. It's not up for UFR that I'm saying this. I mean, not long ago, there was an election that was held here. When we weren't okay with the principles of the election, we didn't go. And any politician will tell you that the hardest thing for a political leader to do is to see a major election pass by without hopping on it, without jumping on the train and get that ride, because that's scary. It destroys your party, because your members are going to go to another leader. We took that risk, and the world saw it. President Sidya decided he wasn't taking part in neither the legislative nor the presidential. That is the most courageous thing you can do as a politician, and he did that. So one or two people at the CNT, at the, you know, it's not going to be. It's CNT is the National Council of the Transition. It's not the most important thing to us, the number of people that are there. It's the number of issues that are being discussed that are there. Right now, we don't have any. The main issues that are supposed to be on the table are being blocked out of being discussed. It's taking too long, and come back to the same thing. It's not about the number of people that we have there. It's about the effect that the whole scheme of the transition have on the country's progress that we're worried about.
Okay, so we spoke about ECOWAS's involvement earlier in the discussion. Obviously, from your comments, you think they can be a little bit more reasonable. I'd like to know what you think would be a reasonable time frame, because that's going to be a major issue when they come back. What would be a reasonable time frame for us to get to where we want to?
See, this time for ECOWAS is it's an incredibly challenging but equally important time for ECOWAS to guide this current situation now in our sub-region here. There are a couple of different forces at play. If you don't set a good example, reasonably set a good example, if things like this proliferate and they take over the whole region, forget about any development, because military junta leadership is known for what it's known for. It's about, they usually development projects and standard improvements, living standard improvements is not the top of the list in most of these things, because they learned to fight. They're order takers and executors. They're not soft leadership, diplomatic types, and the world economy, the world development is negotiated through diplomacy and strategic. So ECOWAS's 6 months was a position of principle, which we understood to be a proposition waiting for a counter proposition, right? Now, we, at the same time, just a couple of weeks later, we offered to the junta 15 months of transition, which we thought we also would have talked to the ECOWAS to support that position more reasonable. That way we would get ready, they'll get ready, and everybody could do it, and we knew we could do it in the 15 months time frame. That has not had received any replies from the military junta, and it's all silence. And so that's what's worrisome. ECOWAS, I think, is doing what it needs to do to avoid a catastrophe in our sub-region.
Okay, so you suggested 15 months as a transition period for the junta, and they have not responded. We are now in the 7th month, so it's like they have 8 or 9 months more. If they go by your suggestion, do you think it is late to capitalize on the rest of it?
No, it's not late. We have a couple of things that we need to do, because this won't be the first elections that we've been to, neither for the country nor for most of the political parties. We've trained for this many, many times. And you know, what needs to be done here is just a little bit of review of the electoral list that we have, and also the laws on the elections, because that were changed by Alpha to make it a way that it'll serve him more than serve the people. So those need to be looked at. But other than that, we already have an electoral list. Just needs to be checked out and fixed and see if they're in 2-3 months. That's usually done. Political parties are ready, being on the ground for 20 years. So going on an election won't be a problem. The means will be there, because we'll have assistance, and we also can find some means ourselves, I think. And I don't think it's late. It's really not. When ECOWAS said 6 months, that would have meant starting work right away. Even that would have been possible. Tight, but possible. 15, definitely yes.
So you mentioned earlier the fact that the silence of the junta is concerning. I would like to know if you think this is deliberate, but it took a long time for exams to come up with the last arm of the government, the transition, that's the National Transition Council. Do you think, firstly, this is deliberate? I mean, maybe they want to drag their feet?
We can't tell why it is the way it is, but we've been asking for that since the very early days of the transition. And we don't, from our position, we're not seeing any obstacles to it, because all the political platforms, all the political leaderships and parties are asking for only that one thing. Not even asking yet about, when we're going to finish. Those questions are not asked. We want to ask them and work on them together so we can help them see a way forward in peace and transparency and all that. But the fact that we're not getting any responses, pushes you to ask yourself some questions about the intentions that they have. Not insinuating anything bad, but insinuating lots of questions, questionable behavior that we're not yet able to read into, because they're not saying anything, and that's worrisome, because you can't lead the country without your fellow countrymen. And a political transition is a political affair more than anything else. So if you think you shouldn't talk to politicians, then that's very, very concerning. Is it deliberate? Probably closest to yes, but not certain, because until somebody's told you what is keeping them from doing it, you can't really finalize your answer on that. But right now, there aren't any obstacles on our side that's blocking that. We're only asking at this point for a political dialogue. Can we talk? Okay. Even that hasn't taken place.
Yeah, so I wanted to be clear on that. I was going to say, hasn't he been talking to the politicians, at least the main players, or hasn't he been doing it the way you would want him to?
He has not, honestly. We have been talking to him, but he's not. He hasn't been replying. Usually there are meetings that are supposed to, quote unquote, meetings, but when we go, when the political leadership is invited, he's not there. I think they only met him once. So when he calls them, they get to the palace. He's other people that meet. We don't know who they are really, because the CNRD, that's the organization that he set in place, is not yet. They haven't filled it in yet. We don't know who are members of the CNRD. Unlike what the DIS did here, when in his time there was a CNDD. We knew the members, the president, the vice president, the first, second, we knew all that. This one is not organized that way. We only know him. And then, we ask him, okay, so since you're too busy to talk to us, who can we talk to? Like, who is CNRD? He said, oh, that's all the security forces in Guinea. It's all the military, all the police, all the, park police, everybody that's in uniform is CNRD. I mean, I can't talk to a traffic police about when we're going to finish the transition. I can't do that. You actually have to know representatives of those different, bodies that compose the official CNRD, so we can have interlocutors, people that we can talk to. Right now, there aren't any. Nobody makes any decision. When we met last time, there was a meeting between our leadership and we call it CNRD. I really don't like to say it that way, and people that he delegated to meet us. When they met us, I was, my president and other presidents there, of course, but when they talked, questions asked, no answers. They said, we're only writing, taking notes. We have to give it to report to the boss, and then he'll have a communique. He'll say something later. So there was no answer. Questions asked, no answer. When they go, you don't see him. That only happened, I think, only once that he was seen in public. We know he's there, but he's not appearing, not talking, not signaling, not acting. And that is a bit worrisome, quite worrisome, actually.
So, a quick one before we move away from the issues of transition and go to some related matters. At the risk of sounding alarmist, from what you are seeing, it's like Guinea is headed for a bumpy ride. I see a situation where the junta doesn't want to give up so soon. What would you say to that?
That won't be a very unreasonable assessment. Scary, but right now that's all they're letting us see. There's no other read on it. I don't see any other options in the cards. All they are doing right now is not talking. And when we've written to them, we've called through media, we've tried to reach out, not only we, the party, I'm talking about all the coalitions. He has not. Civil society has also reached out to him. No replies. And you know what that does? People are always asking questions, what is going on? That can't take too long before things start to rile up. And then when you have people, once you've rattled masses, it's hard to calm them down. Right now, there are women who want to say, oh, things are getting very expensive in the marketplace. It's because of transition. When are we getting out of here? They ask us because, most people in the country are somehow directly or indirectly affiliated to some political party. They'll go to the leadership sometimes during a General Assembly. They go, oh, you're the leadership, maybe you understand more about this. We're suffering in the marketplace. Everything's more expensive. Well, what's happening? Well, we don't know. We want to help the transition, but we don't have the information. We're not talking. He's not talking to us. And he hasn't established any other or a governmental branch or department that is in charge of talking. The chart of the transition that he wrote, that we weren't consulted in writing, he wrote that. Whether he did personally or with we don't know. It came out of there, right? Said that the length, the duration of the transition will be determined by the CNRD and the society forces of the society, civil society forces, all the components of the society. That's what he says. But One of those components is there. That's us, all of us together, right? The other component is CNRD, still not composed. Most people look at the CNT, which took a long time to put in place. CNRD is not even composed yet. And that's supposed to be those guys and us together will be able to determine a duration of transition. I think that's being crossed out, but not officially, because we've asked, since you're not talking, who can we talk to? Where is the CNRD? No answer. Now he say, okay, it's going to be the CNT that's going to determine that. Legally, they can't, because that's not what the chart proposes. That's not what the chart says. The chart is actually our constitution right now. It doesn't say that the CNT has a right to do that. So they can't do that. They don't have that prerogative. What has it is the CNRD plus all of us, the different layers of society together. Now, this side is here waiting for the establishment of the CNRD, which is neither planned, neither nor talked about, or even, I don't think even gonna happen. So bumpy ride, yeah, I think so. At some point, I think. That's why ECOWAS, at first, when they wanted to send an emissary here or somebody they said it wasn't necessary at the time. Maybe it wasn't, but right now it probably is.
Okay. So so as we go, all these questions are being raised, which I'm sure solutions are being sought for them. They have also been doing some stuff. For example, they said they are fighting corruption, and we have seen some actions, towards this. And one interesting action is the confiscation of what are supposed to be state properties. Your president, UFR president, Sidya Toure, happens to be one of the people who lost their homes. What is the party's view? What is the president's position?
You say confiscation of state property. I call it confiscation of private property. Not only I won't talk about my president's case so much, even though I think it's the cleanest case in this, but I am probably will be considered to be biased. But all the documentation and everything he's published it. He actually voluntarily put it online because anybody could look at it. If he wasn't certain of what he has, he wouldn't have done that, because he'd purchased an empty lot of land, when the president at the time had wanted to actually give him a lot of land for free. He said, no, I would like to purchase it. And those documents exist, discussions exist. He bought it, empty lot. He hired an engineering company, a construction company. They built his house based on the blueprint that he provided. That is his house that he built out of nothing, right? And because the president still intended to show his goodwill and good grace, he added to the purchase. The president Sidya purchased it as anyone would have purchased, because they actually valued the land and said, this is how much it costs. He paid that in the public treasury account. The president said, since I wanted to give you a piece of land, you insisted you had to buy it, you bought it, I'm still going to do this goodwill presidential decree to grant you, plus the fact that you've already bought it. So that's an additional safeguard around that thing. But so that is his private property, really. I mean, there's no discussion about it. But beyond that, he's also recouped, he's already also confiscated private domains right behind us here. Like there's a complex here called the Résidence 2000. This is about a dozen buildings lined up like this. Is one of the most, sought after place in Conakry here. It's almost perfect. Anybody that comes here you want to live comfortably as if you anywhere else that is comfortable. That's a place you can do it with pools, major big pools there, and never electricity is never out, water is never out. It's well maintained. They took it from not from Sidya, from a private company that built that. Actually, that's been there for over 20 years. Sidya has been in his house for over 25 years. This is, different. You think Alpha Conde didn't think of that? He said it many times, but when he looked at the documentation he saw, there was no legal basis for that. That's why the CNRD refused to go through the legal process to do this. if you show them document, they're like, oh yeah, everybody has that. People have that. Yeah, well, they're not looking at it because once they start looking at it, they won't be able to argument. They won't be able to do what they want. In Guinea here is in the mining places where people are exploiting millions of tons of the people's property, no contracts, nothing. We don't know anything about that. Alpha signed. Since they came, they haven't asked a single question about a single mining contract. They also recouped some money from the people that were with Alpha. We know hundreds of millions of dollars that they recouped, that we heard about anyways. No reports on it. So if you really want to recoup right now state property, it's not somebody's house. I mean, what's that worth when you have people exploiting and exporting 80 million tons of your bauxite and at no paying zero tax on it? In 6 months, you're not asking about that. You're going to ask about a house.
Some people say Sidya Toure had this house, even though you said he bought it from his money, but he had it when he was in position of power that he could influence whatever agreement was made. They point at conflict of interest.
I understand what that thought process, but you can't, as a private citizen, if I want to buy something, I'm allowed to buy it, right? And get all the documentation. Am I supposed to be punished because I decided to serve the country and accept to be at the service of people? Then I can't buy stuff. It's the people that serve that we punish. So he's not supposed to buy it because he was a high-ranking official. He purchased it. He paid the same money at the time in that neighborhood. Nobody paid that much money for a piece of land. If there weren't a proof like that, they'd say, oh, he acquired it based on influence. But they can evaluate the plots of land in the area at the time. People have evaluated. That was one of the most expensive pieces of land at the time. He paid that money for it. Where's the privilege? He could have accepted actually the president had given him a different place. That's where the prime minister stayed at the time, which was in bad shape. He fixed it up because he wanted to make it comfortable because people came to see him there as prime minister. The president said, you should purchase that. That's where the current first lady, Alpha's first lady, lived. He fixed the place up perfectly. We know that because when he came in, there was inventory. When he was leaving, there was inventory of what he left there. It was completely different. He really made it modern. When he left, he didn't take anything out of there. That was his stuff. He left it there. He purchased this place and built it. So there are lots of private citizens who bought lands in the same period. Should he have been punished because he's prime minister? Should anyone be punished because you're a minister? Should you be punished because you decided to be a journalist? You're not supposed to buy while you're a journalist because you can talk to the minister? That should not be the factors that we will look at. Those shouldn't be conditions. That discourages service, public service, right? He purchased it, yes or not? They say yes, he purchased it at a price very, very competitive at the time. That's what's important.
Is he in court now?
We're going to go to court. We've decided to appeal the decision, to actually attack the decision, but we're waiting on that.
Finally, another issue of interest to Guineans is justice for victims of the Conde regime within the last 11 years. What's the UFR's position on this?
Justice has to be done. You can't have killed a fellow citizen for any reason and not have to respond to the calls of justice for the victims. The people who were killed were no better than them. One of them could have easily been Guinean president tomorrow. Someone had killed you, president, today, you wouldn't have been here. Those are Guineans, equal to every other Guinean that's alive, including those who killed them. So justice has to be done. I don't think that there should be any doubt around that. I think we have absolutely to render justice to victims of all kinds of injustices, but especially to blood crimes in this country, because they've happened a lot, right? And we're calling for that, even if it concerns people actually. What happened in 2009 had concerned people who were with Alpha, and we always called for justice for them. What's happening? What happened towards the end of what happened in Alpha's regime involved some of the people that are in power now, and we're still calling for justice. Justice should always be applied. It doesn't matter what your ranking. They're trying to attack people because they purchased land as private citizens while being, government officials. Now, you have people who killed people as government officials. They have blood on their hands. And you're not talking about that. You're trying to talk about somebody who bought a piece of land. I mean, let's be a little serious. I think blood crimes have to be spoken about, and they have to be justice has to be rendered for that. There's no way to go around that.
So, just quick one. Who do you think should handle this? Now we are pressuring the junta to transition the country, and we want them also to handle justice. They may argue that we do not have enough time for that. Do you think they should leave that to the next man coming?
I think the junta will have a lot of hard time trying to handle justice in this. We're trying to handle anything else but the transition, because they're not legitimate. They are not legitimate.
So
they cannot attack any of these things that they're trying to do. Just giving themselves time and excuses to not talk about the essential questions that we have. They're not qualified to judge anyone when they themselves could be implicated. Let the people choose those they want to judge them, right? So when there's an election and somebody's being elected, what they do, they have to respond to the people. This guy came in with guns. He only responds to his guns. He only answers to his guns, right? Who's going to trust that he's going to render clean justice? Because he's not accountable to anyone but his own guns, right? And we don't want to be submitted to a justice that's like that. I mean, people say it's neutral. It's never neutral. It's never neutral. He did what he did. He's not the only one who did that. He was with Alpha. Let's not forget that. He was, and his team were with Alpha. People were killed all the time. I'm not saying they killed people. I'm saying we saw them with dead bodies, okay? Now, they're not the best people to judge right now, to render that justice. Let them do what they need to do. Organize elections. Have the people choose those they want to carry out justice. Okay, that'll be more legitimate, more legal, more consensual, and everything else.